Right. Hello, everyone, both in Oban and Tyree. Tyree's on that wee camera. Sometimes I'll have to look around there to see you, so I'm waving at everybody, all my pals in Tyree. I finished off the term in Tyree. I'm starting in Oban, and I'll be back in Tyree in a few days. But this is an in-service for us both, and it gives me great pleasure for the first time in 3 years to actually be standing in front of everyone and saying, I hope you had a lovely holiday. I've been doing this like I'm doing with Tyree just now on the VC for the last few years. So to have all the smiley faces, or as many of the smiley faces as I can, live in front of me is much more pleasurable, at least for me. I don't know about you. So I hope you did all have a lovely holiday and that it was relaxing and it wasn't as busy as mine, doing painting houses and decorating. And do you find that actually holidays is just a different type of work? Does everybody else find that as well? Good, I'm not alone then. So I'd like to begin and open up the session with thanking all the office staff, the technicians, the janitors, FES in Oban, or Graham's team in Tyree, for keeping the school open, keeping it running, making sure that the school is all ready to get kicked off for today and for our youngsters next week. There's been an awful lot of work going on in Tyree and in Oban, and it's a great credit to everyone who's put in a massive shift over the short 5-week holiday that we've just had rather than the 6 weeks. So my thanks to everyone who has continued to keep the schools open and getting us ready. So, I should mention actually maybe some of the stuff that has been going on. I know that some of you don't always wonder about the Holy Tyree, or you don't wonder about the Holy Oban, so you'll notice a lot of work's still going on. And I should say, in the case of Oban for tomorrow, please, nobody's to park outside. Even if you've got a disabled badge, you'll need to park slightly further afield. We still have works going on, and we've got construction vehicles at that end of the school tomorrow, so there's no parking out that end of the school tomorrow. Equally, in the case of Tyree, please be careful where you go, because I'm having the school entirely repainted, starting with it outside, and there's still a lot of painters kicking about, so make sure you don't get covered in paint. The inside of Tyree will be painted room by room over the next few months. Other things on the go here, we're having a new construction area built out the back next to the B shed, so if you're out in that particular area, again, please be careful. There's cement mixers, there's men running about with big metal poles, and etc. as we build our construction base ready for Damien's team to move in and do some construction work of our own. And also that front bit of the school is going to be turned into a new garage, a bit like Munro's. We're going to have our own Munro's on site. So if anybody wants to speak to me about getting your car serviced by our young people, feel free. Maybe wash the cars first. So what do I want to move on to now? Additional thanks. I'd like to also thank the staff and the pupils who were supporting the Council's summer programme, our own Summer Sensations, and of course on the Tyree Face, because our staff being involved in these 3 things that we're not purely running ourselves, obviously, is still a great benefit to our youngsters. It still keeps the relationship between you and the youngsters going. It still provides a vehicle for them coming back in that wee bit more upskilled and that wee bit more knowledgeable, and we've not just let them go to the beach every day. So thanks very much for all the staff who volunteered to help out with the council activities or in the Face in Tyree. Let me begin by saying, as I should have at the beginning, there's no fire drills planned, but if you hear that awful noise, please just make your way to the 4 corners of the building as normal. And that's my first housekeeping thing. But I want to mention a second housekeeping thing that I'd like to keep going in both Oban and Tyree. And that is the use of gel. Now, people often forget that COVID really, for us, only began to relax at Easter. And in actual fact, we still kept in a lot of the measures that many other schools have. Like we already had a one-way system, for example, and we had staggered breaks. But I think that one of the biggest things that we did that helped not only deal with COVID was to help deal with our own general health, and that was the increased sanitation measures that we put in place. Particularly using gel as we come in, using the gel when we enter and leave the classrooms. We saw a dramatic improvement in everyone's health, our health as the staff and the pupils' health in general as well. When we go right back to when we first started using the gel before COVID really spiked, we saw a dramatic improvement in the absence rates. So I think that that's something that we should continue to do in an effort to look after our health. And so I'm asking you to continue with that measure. So when you come in the morning, there'll be gel at the front door in both Oban and Tiree. You should have gel in your own classrooms for when you're going back and forward. The youngsters will all continue to be gelled by staff as they come in through the doors. And can I encourage you to keep getting them to wipe down their desks. We've got masses of this stuff left. I don't know how long it will last, but if it lasted another year, we'd be able to measure just how effective that is in keeping us all healthy. So please keep doing that. So don't just walk in the door, walk in, use the gel every time you're moving about. Gel, gel, gel. Okay? So, as well as welcoming you all back, as I like to do each year, is to embarrass some new people. So get ready, because I'm about to list some names and you've got to get up and do twirls or do dances. Actually, oh yes, the Tiree staff that are going to have to dance in a minute are on a big screen being watched by 160 other people, so that's even more daunting. Right, so I'd like to welcome Alistair Lamont, who's joined us in Oban PE department. So up you get. I should have got a judge with like marks out of 10 or something, like in Strictly, because I'm only giving you a 5 for that, Ali, right? And he's going to teach dance as well. That's worrying. I'd also like to welcome Carly Meakin in drama. And Carly will be obviously mainly based in Oban, but will also be doing drama over in Tiree. Ali, you're all right. You're not travelling to Tiree, except every Monday with me. No. Also in Oban is Christopher Barnett, who's in maths. The next one is Ruth Gordon, but I only appointed Ruth Gordon a few days ago along with... oh, she's here! Well, I should have noticed that. I was about to say, but Ruth's not actually starting until September, but I'm pleased that you were able to make it along today and welcome. Really pleased to see you. Right, in Tiree, we've got Andrea Ingram in socials, and she'll be working closely with the whole social department here. So, does she get up and dance? She never danced. Andrea, go and get up and move about or something so I can see you. Oh, she's waving. That's good. Right, who else have we got? Joanna Martin, who's a new science teacher over in Tiree. Right. Ali, she's on an 8. She's going to be a new PE teacher. We've got Michelle Parson, who's a new classroom assistant in Tiree as well. Is she there? She's not here today, but it's good to announce that she's actually there. And that's all the new post holders. In terms of people taking up new roles, Jen Alcott in Tiree is taking up the role of Additional Needs Support Assistant. So thanks very much for doing that new role, Jen. And talking about new roles, I'd also like to thank once again Lorna McRae, who's become the new DHT for primary in Tiree, which will release... Yep. Thanks very much. Which will release Anya to spend more time doing secondary as the secondary DHT. Okay? Now this is particularly important for this audience in this direction, as well as the audience in that direction, because can I remind all the staff who do the multiple VC and departmental liaisons with Tiree, if you have any secondary issues at all, you were going to Mary, please now address all issues to Anya, and she will be the key liaison. And that will release Mary to spend more time doing the PT guidance and PT support role for the secondary. Okay? So, right, that's all the new staff, that's all the changes. Oban is fully staffed. Tyree, however, so if you know anybody that's looking for a job, we need a new maths teacher in Tyree. Mr. Bennett has moved on to pastures new. He's chosen a new path, and so Anya will teach maths along with a supply teacher directly from Tyree. There'll not be any maths VC for the foreseeable future unless there's an illness issue or whatever. So we need a maths teacher. So if you know a maths teacher for Tyree, let them know that there's a job there. We need a teacher of technical in Tyree. There's a re-advert out for that. We also need a home economics teacher. There's a re-advert out for that. And I'm looking for a technician, and ideally a technician apprentice to go out to Tyree as well. The council has an apprenticeship programme, and so if anybody knows anybody under the age of 25 that wants to take up an apprenticeship role and they want to be a technician, then tell them to come and see me. Okay, right. The next pleasurable bit of the meeting is the other good news. Now, every year I get Christine and a few others to track down what's been going on in the community and to tell me what you've all been up to in your personal lives so that I can embarrass you or congratulate you. So, sadly for me, there's no embarrassment issues to be drawn to the fore, unless you've seen a couple of your Facebook pages, then I'd be a bit worried. But in terms of congratulations, I'd like to congratulate Ian McLean and Jill, who had a wee boy called Cameron, and they got engaged. So, and Rhoda, right at the back, Rhoda has become a granny. A granny to young Callan, so you just make sure that you set that same amount of time for us in our, like these meringues, right? So you've got to spread the love between us and Callan, okay? So has anybody got any other good news from either Tyree or Oban that I should be sharing in terms of, did anybody get married on the fly? Did anybody, who else got engaged? Alison and Ali got engaged. Congratulations. Tyree, shout out if you've got any good news for us as well, any engagements, any babies, etc. I'm looking at nod at shaking heads. Okay, right, anybody else? Dominic and English got married. Dominic, I saw you in the shop about 3 days ago and you didn't tell me that. Right, congratulations. Anybody else? Good, so it's still been a fairly good summer with lots of good personal news going on. So well done. Right, in terms of, right, that's the nice, interesting stuff. Moving on to the more professional, job-related, yet still interesting stuff to most of us. Themes. Every year, I have a theme that I like to promote with you. And the theme for the last couple of years has been dominated, obviously, by COVID. And the theme's really been based around health and well-being and about recovery. So it was health and well-being 2 years ago. It was recovery last year. And although COVID hasn't gone away, and we should be careful not to be complacent, and we should continue, as our school improvement plans for Oban and Tyree clearly indicate, concentrate on health and well-being, we are still going up the way in a curve towards moving forward. And so it's time to return to more ambitious themes. In fact, ambition is one of our values. And I'm sure that given that you've all faced that interview question, you all know perfectly well what the vision and the values are. And ambition is one of them. And I actually would like us to be ambitious. I think that should be the theme for this year. We've had a period of instability, followed by stability based on our professionalism and our dedication and our commitment and our talents. And I think it's time to rack that up a wee bit. I think it's time for us to recognise that we can cope with what life is throwing at us, both out of the school and within the school gates. And I think that this past year has been, in my view, very successful. This has been a very difficult time for education. Not having any exams for a couple of years, for example, has posed not only the teachers but the youngsters great obstacles. I think that we've had youngsters going in to an exam where they've not had an exam for a couple of years. We've had other youngsters going into exams where they've not had any exams at all. We have had youngsters in both the primary and secondary who have been isolated to a degree in their own bubbles, keeping the primary 1s to 3, 4s away from the senior primaries and keeping them away from the high school and keeping the S1s separate for the S2s and that. That has created nationally a social issue for us in schools as well as a social issue outside. I think that we began to overcome that in the latter stages of the year. And I think that that's something that we're going to have to continue to be ambitious with and to push our youngsters to get better at interpersonal relationships, get away from that bubble thing and get them used to being with older and younger kids, get them more accepting of each other. I think that we need to not just go, they're the COVID years, or that's a particular problem brought by COVID. I think we should say, no, it's time that we went back to a degree of normality and we put in place a commitment to that normality of interpersonal relations. I think that we began to put in place a normality in terms of expectation for our youngsters within the academic side of things. And last year's academic results were very, very good, in my view. In the case of the primary in Tiree, the ASOL data is superb. They have seen a huge upswing, and well done to all my primary colleagues. The results in the ASOL data is superb. And in terms of the high schools, the high school data is much better than we predicted. There will always be departments who are up here, getting nearly 100% or 100%, and there will always be departments who, for whatever reason, are further down that pecking order, and we need to continue with development work, and that's quite natural in any school and across the country. We'll continue to work on that. But over the piece, as I said to everyone at the end of term, I did it here on the Wednesday and I did it on Tiree on the Friday, the end of term, congratulating everybody. I thought that we did really well in preparing our youngsters for their exams, and that has been borne out in the exam results. Our exam results, now they're not all in. The problem with exam results, particularly for Oban, is the wealth of opportunity means that we don't just do our bog standard SQA courses in terms of English, maths, history, best subject that we do obviously, and the other things like music and art and all these subjects. We've also got our wider achievements and through you and the NPAs that are delivered across all our traditional departments, the apprenticeships that are delivered across some departments, the Scottish studies, the mental health and well-being, the leadership that are developed from a number of you across departments. All of these results, the college courses, we should thank Argyll College as well for all they have done as well. All these results aren't in yet. We are sitting about, if Aileen will maybe correct me, but I think we're sitting about 3 to 5% behind the national, but we still have about 400 results still to go in. We fully expect that to jump about another 10 to 15%, in which case we've massively overtaken the national figures. And as is the case every single year, but we don't find out till February, we're on par to be up in the top 2 schools in the authority again when measured against the VC. Last year, we were sitting as the second best school in the authority based on our VC comparisons. That's a credit to all the staff in Tiree and all staff in Oban working really hard for our youngsters. And it's just been borne out again. Okay? I fully expect the final results next February to mirror the February results from this year to a high degree, proving that you're all doing a great job. And so, thank you very much. And let's continue with that theme of being as ambitious for this whole year as we were allowed to do at the latter part coming out of COVID last year. We got that level of success coming out of COVID and facing a really tough 3 or 4 months in the run up to Easter, up to the term. Well, we're a whole year at it now. Think what we can do if we can do that in such troubled times. Okay, so I'd like you to be really quite ambitious as being the first theme. Now, normally I only have one theme, but this year I want to have a second theme, and that second theme is on the subject of leadership. I mentioned at the end of the session that we've got Norwegian schools coming back to look at what we do in Oban, and they're also going to do Oban and Tiree this year. And these Norwegian schools have chosen Oban and Tiree as a model of excellent international practice. And, you know, I've had the opportunity, as I've said to you before, to stand on the national stage and talk about our post-16 programme. I've had the opportunity to talk about a recovery programme. I've had the opportunity to talk about teacher or school leadership on a number of occasions. And now I've got the opportunity to talk about pupil leadership as well. So we're going to merge our success at teacher leadership with the pupil leadership and really go for a year-long programme of encouraging that, being ambitious with the number of people that we have involved in leadership. People often, I think, less so these days, but still it is a problem, that people think your leadership is folk like me, standing up behind a lectern with a camera and all the rest of it and talking to you about running the school, because I get to pick what the theme is. But remember that I continue to just speak about what you do. When I'm standing on that stage, wherever it is, I'm talking about your efforts. And there are so many of you, both sitting in that room in Tiree and sitting in front of me here just now, who are natural leaders. But you can equally develop that natural leadership capacity, and you can also learn that leadership capacity. You can work with others collectively to get better, to improve your skills, to broaden your wealth of leadership experience, and in doing so, often have a more fulfilling professional experience, as well as often providing a more developed experience for the youngsters. Quite often, folk don't see themselves as leaders, but they are. The teachers who are helping others quietly in their department, helping others get better, are leaders. Helping each other with problems are leaders. Helping groups of youngsters out with the normal classroom environment are leading educational development. Leading clubs, leading professional groups, whether it's a reading group or whether it's a CPD activity within a faculty area where you're trying to come together and take forward some educational development. It's not just the PTs doing that. It's lots of you, right across the school. And it's not just the Algians like me that have been here for ages. It's often, I find, the ones that are no long out of teacher training college. So it doesn't really matter whether you're no long out of teacher training college or whether you've been a teacher for donkeys like myself and many others around this room. It's about what's in here wanting to help others, and that's leadership. And I want to encourage that amongst you all. Now, there'll be one or two of you, or 3 or 4 of you, that will, for family reasons, for example, if you've just had a young bambino, you'll know what it's like and the time constraints that will come. But most of you, hopefully, will find time to sit and think how we can help each other, work together, and how you can support your department colleagues, how you can support the kids in your department, how you can come together collectively across the school and work with others in working groups. We're going to have to put the working groups back on this year. I think I met with SLT just the other day, and there'll be working groups for Oban and Tiree, and things like, obviously, health and well-being, learning and teaching, communication, and raising attainment is the 4 that come off the top of my head. I actually think there's a 5th one, but I can't remember what it is. Who remembers? And the leadership one itself, yeah, the obvious one to miss. So I'd quite like to ensure that you are all taking a leadership role within your department, because basically the standards for full registration ensure that you have to do that. You have to work together to take something forward in your department. I'd also like you to sign up for a working group, and it doesn't have to be one of these 5 that I've just mentioned, but sign up for something that takes forward the professional development or the interests and talents of our youngsters. And I'd like to hear, and so I'm going to send a sheet out. I'll get Christy to send it out, or Aileen maybe. Oh, in fact, it's Lauren. Lauren's going to send the sheet out. I want to hear what you're already doing as well, because I'm aware that ad hoc, many of you come to me and you ask, can I do a degree on something? Can I do a course on something? Can I go to X, Y, and Z? And I always say, as long as it's going to benefit the youngsters, then we approve almost every piece of CPD that's ever asked for. That's quite unusual. I'm sure that people in other schools, and there's a limited CPD budget or CLPL budget, and I don't believe in limiting it, because I want to encourage you all to develop. And so please keep coming to see me with these developments. For those who are already doing stuff for the local authority and on the national stage as well, can you please add that into the sheet, because I'd want to celebrate that success and share with others what you're doing. Because one of the worst things that we can possibly do is be doing stuff out with the school, and then we don't come back and we don't share it beyond 2 or 3 people. So I'd like to try and avoid that. Okay, so that's what our 2 themes are. It's on ambition and it's on leadership, and the staff in Tiree Primary, Tiree High School and Oban High School will all come together in various different strands to work together to take that forward. And that theme will be continued through the in-service as we talk about collective learning and teaching and pastoral care issues. And I'll get to that in a minute. Right, just check my list to make sure I've not missed anything. No, right, I've covered everything. I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask any questions of me. You probably not, but why not? Anybody got any questions? Anybody got any questions on Tiree? Right, well, in that case, can I say thanks very much for listening to all my good news. Thanks very much for being so enthusiastic about the 2 new themes of ambition and leadership. I saw that in the faces, really. And I'm looking forward to a busy, exciting year. Please remember, penultimate thing, it doesn't matter if I'm in Oban, or if I'm in Tiree, or if I'm in Edinburgh, or if I'm in Glasgow. You can reach me anytime you want. All you have to do is use Skype or phone my mobile, and I will be happy to support you in whatever way I can. I do not have to be standing in front of you to give you whatever support you need. So please take up that invite and call me anytime, no matter where I am. I'd like to give my final thanks to all the staff who have prepared the next almost 2 days of fun-filled, action-packed, in-service stuff for you, but particularly Lauren, who leads the CLPL. So thanks very much, everyone, and let's move on to the in-service programme. Cheers!
Right, Matthew, morning, everyone. So for the next session, we're going to look at positive relationships, or the positive relationships policy that we have in the school. So if you've been allocated a group, then you are part of this session. If you've not been allocated a group, so that's generally the support staff who do not work directly with young people, as in they don't work in a classroom with young people, then you are free to go and get on with the other tasks that you are working on just now. So if you're at the top and you're not sure about your group, there are sheets at the bottom there. You can check your group number and go and join your group, please. Okay, we will tidy this up a wee bit in terms of we'll reduce a couple of the bits just to try and get things back on time, back on schedule, and avoid talking for too long as well. So what we're going to do in this session, I know it looks like a long session on the programme, and some of you will be thinking, how are we going to manage 2 hours on this? We have split up the session into different sections, and the majority of the session is you working in groups, discussing things or giving feedback on things rather than us talking at you. So I'm just going to share the aims of the session first of all, and then I'm going to hand over to Kevin. He's going to talk a wee bit about the national context, the national policy in terms of where positive relationships sits in the national context. I'm going to do a wee bit just on the local context, where this comes from in Oban and Tyree schools, and then we're going to move on to really the main part of the session where, as I say, you are working, not listening to us or listening to me and Kevin. So basically, just to share with you the aims of the session first of all, the main thing is to raise awareness or remind or introduce to new staff the positive relationships policy in Oban and Tyree schools. We also want to give an opportunity to share ideas and strategies that support the building of a positive ethos and positive relationships in the classroom, in the school and schools. We also want to give a bit of time just to reflect on, renew or refresh knowledge and skills when it comes to building positive relationships, building a positive ethos. And the main thing for us as SLT as well is we really want the opportunity to gather feedback that's going to inform our improvement planning, our professional learning programme, our school policies as well. So they're the 4 aims that we're working on today. As I say, Kevin's going to talk a wee bit just now about the national context, and then I'll come back to the local context of Oban and Tyree schools and where this sits.
Thank you, Lauren. I've actually shared this presentation already, and I'm in the habit now of putting lots of hyperlinks into these presentations or any documents back to presentations, because a lot of the feedback that I got from CLPL when I asked your comments and for consultation said how useful you found it to have a one-stop shop, that either as an individual or a department or as a whole school we can all go to. It's there centrally. Everything that we probably need to support us on this particular issue is readily available. So because I'm very, very conscious of time, I'm going to speed through my little bit, but you do actually all have it at your fingertips. And the thing on this slide that I'd like to highlight is the hyperlink at the top, because that will take you to a working document that I hope everyone will find incredibly helpful over the next year, as Peter said, talking about interrelationships and so on and so forth. And I hope that it'll inform our CLPL, it'll inform some of the work that you want to do as we groups, it'll inform work that you want to do as an individual, it'll inform work that you might want to do with some groups of children. There's big posters in there that you might want to use in the classroom, but do take the time to have a look at it. And part of this morning, I've distilled it down into some core bits, which we're going to ask you to look at. So some of this stuff I've actually taken from Highland Council. They have a fantastic document which I found extremely useful, and it's actually the 6 little boxes at the bottom, and people in Tyree and all my colleagues in Oban will recognise that each one of those 6 boxes we already focus on and we put a lot of work in. Now, in terms of the national perspective, I'm going to leave you to find your own time in your departments or as individuals to go through these slides. I'll highlight a few of them. But what I want to emphasise is that everything we have done at the moment and everything that we've done over the last 4 or 5 years is evidence-based. We have really solid evidence that the approaches that we have become so good at, but we still want to improve, do have a very long sustained impact. And I know there's lots of chit-chat and edu-twitch and so on and so forth about various aspects of behaviour. The real perspective is probably harder to quantify, but as Peter highlighted at the start, and as you're going to see in your tasks, we want to start the school year on Monday in a very positive way with some real rigour. I thought the last 2 or 3 weeks of last term we saw a marked improvement, although things were pretty good with most folk anyway. So you can see from the slides that I'm showing you at the back here that there are some really fundamental principles that we're all adhering to. And we do have a very thorough policy. We are going to give you a chance to look at it and give us some open and honest comments about how you'd like us to take it further. But I think there is no doubting now that, as you can see at the top of this slide, we have to embed everything in good relationships. And the key phrases that I've highlighted in pink will resonate with many of you. and it will reinforce what phenomenal, fantastic, positive work you really do in every single minute of all of your lessons, in all the interactions that you have with youngsters in the corridors, out on the yard, the relationships that you've built up with families. It does make a huge difference, but it is totally and utterly embedded in these positive relationships that we have to work very, very hard at to sustain. I won't worry you with the philosophy. Again, I would urge you to I think it's really important for you just to have a sort of a philosophical point of view as to why we are all doing this together. We keep talking about coherence, we keep talking about consistency, but it is embedded in this deep philosophical framework that we've adopted, and we all need to have an awareness of this. In summary, relationships matter, as I've just said, and you'll notice that on the bottom left there's a hyperlink to some very, very useful, short, sharp, succinct, practice-based, classroom-based resources from the EEF that I'm sure many of you have already used, but it's there, accessible. This is from Professor McTaggart, somebody I admire hugely. He's the lead consultant psychiatrist for children in Highland Council, but he created this wonderful summary of everything that we do in terms of having a nurture-based approach. I can't say too much at the moment, but many of you will have heard that the four of us, alongside our pastoral team, have done a very big piece of work looking at some of the children that are disadvantaged and struggling lower down in the school for a number of different reasons. And we have a very exciting project that we're going to launch this year. It needs a couple of weeks for us to get it off the ground. Those of us that are going to be mostly involved have got a major training session tomorrow. We're being supported by the principal teacher of Nurture for the authority in a very proactive way, and Lisa Myberg is taking a very big lead as well, so we're very grateful to them. But he summarises the sort of whole Shinari point of view, and you will recognise phrases in each of those triangles or those bits of pie that you do on a daily basis in your classroom. And it occurred to me that it might be useful perhaps to have a copy of this particular poster close by or printed out on your desk or something, just as a gentle reminder as to the approach that we take. I think probably the most important message that I wanted to leave you with is the bottom right. We have to teach this to our children. We cannot assume, and we will have to teach it to them every single day and every single lesson at some stage. There are a vast majority of kids who get it straight away, but there will be children that you are still, on June the 28th, asking them to take their hoodie off or to take their jacket off or to put their phone away or to speak to somebody else politely and so on and so forth. It has to be taught, and that's just the way of the world, but it does need a huge amount of stamina amongst all of us. I'll finish off now, but this is just to emphasise that we have a proactive approach that we have, and that's the vast majority of what we're going to be talking about today. Right, the slides have stopped working. We then have an approach where we are dealing with the problem. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about very, very briefly is that it's how we pick everything up after this. It's the restorative, okay? But as you heard, it sounds like I've got a family emergency. So I'm going to hand over to Lauren. Please find the time to load up this PowerPoint, to look at the Word document that I've put together. As I say, it's literally an opportunity for you to cherry pick that's best for you as a department and as individuals. Thank you.
Okay, so as I say, I'm just going to talk a wee bit about the local context in terms of positive relationships policy in Oban and Tyree schools. So as some of you will be aware, there is a positive relationships policy. That was formulated by a working group 3 or 4 years ago. The policy is really embedded or incorporates the work of Paul Dix from the When Adults Change, Everything Changes book. And it was accompanied by a package of training. So we had the pivotal training, we had those sessions, which kind of was bringing that policy live and talking about the actions and so on, and how we deal with things. The thing with a policy that's been introduced 3 or 4 years ago is that that's really at the stage where it really needs to be refreshed. So if some of you have had a look at some of the stuff that Kevin's put in the shared folder and some of the things that we're going to read today, it talks about slippage, it talks about drift, and it talks about when these things go off the agenda, and obviously then that has a negative effect or a negative impact. Okay, so really the purpose of this is thinking, it's giving you time as part of these sessions as well, really to reflect and say, well, what has been working or what is working with these policies at the moment, how are these policies being implemented at the moment, what isn't working, what needs refreshed, what needs to be looked at, and so on. Okay, so it's about making sure that we've got a live policy which we are using and we are using consistently. And as I say, the point of today is looking at and seeing what does this policy say, which bits of this are we using, which bits are we not using, which bits do we need to refresh, and how do we go about doing that. Okay, so we've got the policy there, we need to remind ourselves what is in there and how we use that just now, but we also need the next bit where we talk about, right, where do we move forward with this? And that's where, as I say, some of the feedback you give us today informs us of your views on that. And then as an SLT, we look at that, we analyse it and say, right, where do we go next with this? And I say that's important in terms of making sure that we've got a live policy, which we are all using and we're all using consistently as well. So there's questions as well for professional learning in terms of CLPL. We have the pivotal programme sitting there. We had 2 trainers. Do we go back and look at that? How do we use that? Do we use it for everybody? Do we use it for some people? And again, it's really important that you've got the opportunity to give your views on that in terms of professional learning and let us know how you want that to move forward and what would be beneficial to support you as classroom practitioners, as support assistants, as other members of staff in the school to make sure that we're able to live this policy and, as I say, apply it consistently. Okay, so as I say, we have 3 documents which are key. The positive relationships policy itself, as in the why. Why do we do this? And then we have the Ready, Respectful, Safe posters, the relationships blueprint in terms of the how. So basically, in terms of the next task, this is the point where I'm asking everybody to read the policy, to look at the policy as it is just now, and look at the information that we have at the moment. As I say, for some people, this is new. They're new to the school. They've not seen this before. For other people, it's maybe a refresh, or for some of you, maybe it's lived every day and you know it quite well. I wish we had time that we could actually get feedback from everybody, but as you can appreciate, with 20 groups here, and 4 to 6 groups in Tiree, we're not going to manage to do that in a successful way. But please rest assured that I will be with SLT colleagues going through the feedback that you provide on the sheets and summarising that and sharing that with you, so you do get the opportunity to get feedback from other groups and hear what other groups are saying. Just very briefly, I'm sure there's a few common themes. If I summarise the discussion that we're having here, we're talking about some of the key points from the Adam Boxer articles that are in the pack about keeping behaviour and relationships on the agenda, and revisiting this stuff more frequently and talking about it more frequently, and then also talking about things like restorative practice. Do we need more training around that? What are the roles around restorative practice? Who does what and when? So there may be key themes that are coming from other groups. I don't know. I'll see that in the feedback. But as I say, it gives you an idea of some of the things that we're talking about and needing to clarify roles and responsibilities and so on. So as I say, it'll be interesting for us to get your feedback and get your perspectives on this as well. And as I say, we are going to revisit this. It's not 15 minutes to talk about it and then we never talk about it again. Okay, we need to keep it on the agenda, in my opinion. I'll see whether you agree or not, and we'll take it from there. In terms of the next part of the session, is really about the chance to improve knowledge and skills, refresh knowledge and skills, look for strategies and think about strategies that we can use with young people, that we can use in our classrooms, we can use when we're working with young people in terms of building positive ethos, building positive relationships and so on. So what I've asked a couple of staff to do, and the reason I've approached these particular staff is because I'm aware of things that they're doing. And this goes back to Peter's point earlier about knowing what people are up to. Okay, so quite often I've got a very limited scope of people that I know what they're doing and what they're working on in their classrooms for lots of different reasons, whether that's right or wrong, sorry. But this is where, we do need to know more about what's going on around the place and who's doing what, and then we've got more people that we can approach and ask and get to share things, that are willing to share things and so on. But what I've done for this part, the next part, focusing on strategies, knowledge, information, knowledge and skills and so on, is to invite Fiona and invite Colin just to give a wee bit about some of the practice in their classrooms. As Kevin highlighted, the evidence-informed practice talks about the need to be proactive rather than reactive when it comes to building positive relationships. So I've asked Fiona to talk about habits and routines in her classroom and some of the work that she does on that. In terms of building a positive ethos, and I've asked Colin as well. Colin and I have had a few discussions about some of the metacognitive stuff, the learning to learn stuff he's doing in his classroom and the impact that has on relationships. So the idea of this is to share some knowledge, to share some skills, and for you to reflect and see, is this something that I could use in my classroom? Is this something I would use with the young people I'm working with? How could that be improved upon? What could I do? And then part of the document as well, there is a self-evaluation checklist which will give you time to go and look at once you've heard from Fiona and Colin and start thinking about the first 3 weeks, your interactions with young people, how you're setting up your classroom and so on, and how you're setting things up when people are coming in the door. So as I say, the next part's really about reflecting and thinking, what knowledge and skills do I already have? How can I share that with my colleagues that I'm with here? What other things are being put in front of me that's reminding me of things I did or I used to do? And as I say, this is part for me that I really need to go back and look and think, right, what do I do that works and what do I do that doesn't work and what do I need to improve on? Because, that's a big thing for me as well, reflecting on my own practice. So Fiona's going to start off. She's going to tell us just very quickly a wee bit about habits and routines in her classroom, and then Colin's going to come up and speak to us a wee bit about the role of metacognition in his classroom. Then we're going to have a short break, at which you can get up off these really comfortable seats and move around, etc., and then come back to do the self-reflection part. Okay, thanks.
Hi, everybody. Lauren didn't mention anything about doing this in a microphone, so I apologise in advance. She also mentioned there about lots of things that you might think, I could try that in my classroom. And what I'm going to talk about, I guarantee that all of you already do in your classrooms, but it kind of, last year we had an NQT with us, and it really struck me how her observing colleagues, maybe in October, November time, she was seeing things in the class where kids were coming into the classroom, they knew where to go for their books, they knew how to get started, they entered the class really well, and there was all these routines and habits which had been established by the teacher, which for her looked like it just happened. And actually there was an awful lot of groundwork that had gone into that beforehand. And what I want to talk about today, just a wee bit of the kind of pre-season training, if you like, that we need to do in order for this to be consistent and for pupils to establish really positive habits, which actually will help, hopefully, develop those relationships and actually minimise the number of issues that we're having in terms of behaviour things. So I'm going to keep it really, really simple. And give you kind of 3 things which I do. The first one is sometimes really difficult, and I don't always manage it. Last year I was teaching 4 different spaces across the school, but trying to be at your door, and I know people talk about it all the time, and we do that loads of the time, but being at the door and being able to greet your pupils and have that moment with them where you maybe say, I really like your makeup today, or I really like that bag that you're wearing, or well done for what you did at the weekend, I saw you been out in the rugby pitch or whatever, and and having that moment to just connect with them personally before they come into the classroom, I think it sends a really, really positive vibe to them that you're there, you're ready, you're organised, you're dead keen for them to be there, you're setting that tone straight away. If they're all kind of coming in dribs and drabs and there's no real structure, I think sometimes it doesn't help the pupils who maybe struggle to regulate with them, and I think they have a real kind of sense that that's the structure and that's the routine that they can expect when they come into your class. The second thing that I was going to say is that maybe I'm a monster, but I always have a seating plan for pupils. I don't let them sit where they want to sit in the class, and there's a number of reasons for that. Again, it's this kind of habit that they know where they're coming into, they know the seats that they're going to, they know what to expect when they come into the class, and it maybe sounds really mean that I don't get them to sit beside their friends or don't let them to do that, but I think actually for maybe some of the wee souls that don't have many friends in the class, actually they're maybe quite thankful that you're just taking that popularity contest away, and it's not you get to sit beside your pals and people have lots of friends get to sit together, and then there's people left over to the side. So I usually have that all arranged and organised in advance, and they come in and then they're told where to sit, and then it keeps it consistent for them and they don't have to think about that every time that they come into the class. And I think there's a power in that. I think there's a power in us all being consistent across the school, because then pupils don't have to think about it when they go from different subjects to different subjects. It's the same routines that they're establishing. And the last thing that I try and always do, and I don't always manage it, but is have something up on the board for them to do, or something on their tables for them as they come in. And that's really difficult, again, if you've had a class that you've taught just beforehand, but it doesn't have to be something really complicated. It could just be something like list 5 things that we talked about last period, or draw me an example of a cylinder, or I try and have something which reflects on their learning from maybe last period or last week or last month, so that it's something achievable for them, and it means that there's not questions and hands going up like, I don't know what to do, I don't understand this. So I know some pupils and staff decide in a classroom to maybe open up with a big question and get them to think about something that they're going to be learning. I found it more useful to reflect and use that as kind of recapping on what they have done previously, and they just get into the habit of it. They just kind of look for whatever it is that you're going to have out on the table or up on the board and come in and get organised. And I find that's really useful if I am moving between classes. I can get logged onto the computer, I can do the register, etc., and allow them to do that. So that's my kind of 3 things. I don't know if it's been useful or not, but it was just, I think it's really important collectively, the more that we do together, it means the same message that the pupils get across the board, and it makes our jobs easier, hopefully, as well.
Good evening. No, sorry. Yeah, metacognition for me was something that I kind of stumbled on and deliberately. When I was on a temporary contract, we got given all these support strategies, and I was like, I like the sound of that word, but I always have this fear that I'll be pulled into Peter's office and he'll grill me about it, so I'd understand what it actually meant. And then from there, it really just kind of ignited a switch for me, and it related to my whole kind of learning experience in high school. Let's just say I didn't apply myself that well, but then about 2021, by reading the report from the Education Endowment Foundation, it helped me pull everything together and helped me actually understand why I was a success and how I kind of, as a teacher, you can continue to build on that. Very cheesy, but one part of the research that I've done for that kind of resonates with us is if knowledge is power, metacognition is a superpower. And I've got that tattooed. No, I don't. But yeah. So that's been a core part of my teaching, and I've done a lot of extensive research with Education Scotland, local authority with middle leadership training on that as well, and it's impacted upon my VC delivery and also classroom teaching. The main points that I've taken from it that I would encourage every teacher to think about is some people learn like sponges. They just take in information, no problem at all. I'm not like that. I need things to be kind of broken down, the nuts and bolts. If you can imagine an engine, actually taking it apart and doing it very slowly, bit by bit. Some things happen sometimes it can go faster, sometimes it can go slower, sometimes things just click. But there's 4 different types of learners. You've got a tacit learner, who is essentially the sponge. You've got 4, and then I'll not go through all 4. Then you've got the 4th one, which is the reflective learner, the metacognitive one, the pupil that needs an essay given to them and actually broken down how you actually get to this stage, rather than just producing it all in the one, which is something I would have done as a pupil. At this stage, I'm now thinking, breathe. I'm so nervous. But yeah, for that. So the key part for that for me, and it's something that was last year, everything's been this kind of ongoing snowball effect. It's all about really knowing how we learn. If we are asking a doctor, if you can explain to me how does you would expect a full explanation of how the body works. As a professional, as a teacher, I would expect myself to explain to a parent, a teacher, anyone else, how learning actually works. And that's helped me to actually understand how I learn as well. And I can see faces around my classroom of kids that were very much like me. And therefore, that's why you kind of, all these genetic things that people take for granted, it's all genetic and everything, like chunking activities, being relentless in checking for understanding, questioning. It's about, yeah, we all do them, but it's about actually doing them well, understanding its impact, not leaving any pupil behind before you actually move on. And metacognition, kind of, in our subject, there's a lot of knowledge. But it's like you're saying, you've got the tacit learners that will absorb that knowledge, but it's actually about breaking down how we get that knowledge, why we do what we do, why I use these strategies, why they are effective, why they have an impact. Cold calling's one of the key things that I do in my class, and I'll ask the class, I'm going to ask each one of you a question at some point as well. Can I ask you why I'm going to do that? And you don't really move on until you've got an explanation. You're essentially trying to justify the actual craft of your work. And the one thing that's been the most surprising about that is how receptive pupils are to that. They actually have a respect and they actually start to think. And I'm not just generally saying that. There's times where you've done this. Usually I won't... Christine Ray would come in my class and you'd straight away, you'd slick on metacognitive, you'd just turn into a different person. And you'd hope for the best that no one's going to say something stupid in the class. But you'd be so surprised by what the pupils actually come out with, how they can actually go through the scaffold process and creating a paragraph, etc. So it just becomes this kind of authentic culture as opposed to a tick box kind of approach to your lessons as well. I mean, that's helped massively the VC delivery in terms of, it's really good for the VC, it was very good in terms of understanding what types of pace we need to go at, what's good enough, how are the pupils actually doing, and therefore that helped with quick interventions, etc. It's also been massive in terms of the BGE. This isn't really for me, this is what I've learned from my colleagues in the department. I've got we've got a really good department, and the amount actually amazing work that they're doing that they don't really know that they're doing it, that is so high quality, evidence-based research. I'm just the geek that just tries, that's so insecure, they'll go in and read it, just trying to make yourself feel better. But there's so many people across this school that are doing a lot of this without knowing the actual impact of it. So it's just really a case of, the one thing I said before you would leave it is, there's a lot of basics, there's nothing new groundbreaking, but it is really about marginal gains, getting better. And I'll be honest as well, yesterday you kind of listened to this kind of cost of living crisis and all that, and there's going to be a lot of poor souls in our classrooms, so I think it's even more important that we actually understand the impact of what we're doing, and that checking for understanding, make sure no poor wee soul is getting left behind, and that we're being the best that we can be as well. So I'm going to stop talking. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Thank you very much, Colin and Fiona, that was great. As I say, the purpose of that was really just to give you some perspective on practice in the school, strategies, other things that people are doing, just to kind of make you think about your own practice. Like Fiona says, there's lots of you, if not all of you, doing all those basic things, and it's just reminding ourselves that we do those basics and they do make a difference. And it's also, there's lots of really experienced teachers in this room, but equally there are new teachers in the room as well, so those messages are important for them to hear as well. But thank you very much to both our colleagues there for sharing those. So, the next part of the session really is about self-reflection, the proactive behaviour management stuff. As I say, the evidence-based approach to the EEF, the various documents, various national policies talk about proactivity when it comes to building positive relationships and a positive ethos and managing behaviour in the classroom. So that was part of the information that we heard from Colin and Fiona as well, some suggestions or some tips or some things that they do in terms of taking a proactive approach. So really what we wanted to build in as well was the opportunity for people to reflect on the things that they've heard so far, also to have a look at pages 11 and 12 of the document, so where you were using the policy and the Ready, Respectful, Safe posters and the blueprint, they were pages 4 to 9, and that same document on pages 11 and 12, okay, and if there are technical issues with this, I will come and help you, just come and get me from the front and let me know and I'll give you a hand, all right? So basically there's a self-reflection tool there, and it's about the proactive, the way that we're setting up our lessons, setting up our classes, the way we're interacting with young people when we're getting started. And really what we want to do is give everybody 15 minutes, and this is self-reflection, so this is you having a look, a read through by yourselves and thinking about your own practice, your own interactions in the classroom, and reflecting and saying, well, what am I doing from this, or what do I do, or what could I do, what works well, what do I agree with in this, what do I not agree with necessarily, what do I not think works, what are my ideas that could improve on the information in that document. Okay, that document's not there as a, this is what you will do. That document is there as a tool to think about our own practice, to think about our potential practice, and really say, how can I improve on this, or what suggestions do I have from my own experience that could improve on that. So as I say, the first 15 minutes is about really reading through that yourself, reflecting on your own practice, your own interactions with young people, your own things that you do, and asking yourself the questions in the last column in that document. We'll do that for 15 minutes, and then we've basically got 10 minutes to summarise and have a discussion. And as I say, we'll go back to summarising on the sheets. And again, that's giving us an indication in the feedback of what's going on, what ideas, what suggestions, what strategies people have, what things they're intending to do. And that, as a school, gives us a bit of a toolkit, a bit of a reflection of what is going on, a bit of a reflection of what people might put in place, and gives us strategies that we're then able to share with others as well. So could we take 15 minutes just now? As I try and find the timer on my watch just now. 15 minutes just now. So again, number ones, can you just make sure people are on task doing the reading, they're not going off and talking about their holidays or whatever. You can be the bad guys in the group. Number twos, can you just do the timekeeping just now as well? Just remind people the time that they've got left. Right, 15 minutes going on the timer now. Right, hello folks. I'm actually a wee bit ahead of time, but I've just consulted a few groups just to check if they think this is a sensible idea to move things along a wee bit. But because there's a lot of discussion going on already, what I think we'll do is we'll just go stop the discussion there just now, go 5 minutes to record on your sheet what you've been discussing. Okay, so to do the reflective bit, and then we'll move on, and then, as I say, we'll just try and pick the pace up a wee bit and get things finished on time. So there's two things left to do in this session. The first one is to reflect on the CLPL work from last year in terms of differentiation and feedback and the role that plays in proactivity in building ethos, relationships, behaviour management and all the rest of it. And the last bit to do is the plenary. I'm going to keep the plenary really short and sweet, okay, to give more time for discussion. So basically in this section, really interesting, really helpful for the teachers in the groups to share the work that was done in their faculties on feedback and differentiation last year, to tell us some of the strategies, some of the things that were discussed and put into policy in the department, and the ways, and then reflect everybody in the group. As I say, the teachers are sharing the bulk of that information, but the support staff should have seen this in action around the building as well. They will be best placed to tell us whether these things are working, and I think it's really interesting as well for the support staff that are maybe based in the Learning Centre to hear about some of the things that went on around the school last year and some of the things that were discussed. So could we take roughly about 7 minutes just now, please, Teachers in the group, could you give us a couple of points about the feedback and the differentiation work that was going on in your faculties throughout the CLPL programme last year, and maybe the impact that that's had, what's worked, what hasn't, and as I say, a chance for everybody to have a think about those strategies. Okay, folks, as I say, I'm just going to do a quick plenary and then I can let you away for the break. When I say plenary, it's more just me summarising, going back to the aims that we had at the start, just tying a few things together and sort of mentioning next steps as well, so you know that this will go somewhere, we're going to do something with it. So basically, as I say, the aims that we had for this session was really to raise awareness or remind or introduce the positive relationships policy, to share ideas and strategies that support the building of positive ethos, positive relationships. It was to give people time to reflect, renew or refresh their knowledge and skills. Also an opportunity to gather feedback to inform improvement planning, professional learning and school policies. So hopefully there's lots of good stuff there, I'm sure there is, but hopefully there's lots of stuff that we can summarise and distill and help us inform the next steps for this. I have asked principal teachers in department time to lead a discussion or to do some work on the positive relationships policy within the department. So there is an opportunity for you to discuss this with your departmental colleagues as well. As I say, you will have the feedback that's been gathered in groups here, but PTs, if there is additional feedback that comes out of those discussions, any points that you want to raise, you want to share with SLT, that you want us to take into consideration when we're formulating our next steps, I'd really appreciate if you could pop those in an email and send that to me, and I will add it to the feedback that we have from this. In terms of where we go next, that really depends on what feedback you've given us today, and I will try my best to summarise that and share it with you all as quickly as I can. As I'm sure you can appreciate, 26 groups over Oban and Tyree makes that quite a big job, but we'll see how we get on with that. As I say, I don't want to say next steps without using that feedback to inform it, because it's important that you've informed those next steps as a staff. The one thing that I will say, though, is that Kevin shared a sort of it's not a shelf, it's a self-evaluation checklist. And basically, Kevin and I were thinking that this might be a useful tool to evaluate against as a school. And as you'll see from the top things there, if you put it onto that one, it's not just about in the classroom, it's not just about your work in the classroom, it's about our work at whole school level as well. And I hope you I was going to say the wrong thing there. What I mean to say is we have sat as a group and we've worked through the tasks and we've come up with a few things that we think that we need to work on or need to look at as well, and part of that goes into this self-evaluation checklist. So as I say, next steps for you just now, in your departments, when you're looking at positive relationships policy in your department, reflecting, giving us more feedback where that's appropriate, PTs, and then once this feedback is gathered and analysed, then we can look at next steps in terms of policy, in terms of professional learning, in terms of shared expectations and refreshing, renewing policy, whether we need to pull back together a working group, refine, recreate, renew, whatever it is we need to do. As I say, the key thing with this is taking this existing positive relationships policy, making it live again, going back and looking at it, and then looking at how we refresh it, relaunch, and so on. PTs, the other thing that you might notice that I've put on your checklist as well is the posters, the Ready, Respectful, Safe posters, the blueprint, should be in every classroom, and I have asked you to record on the checklist that I've given you how many of those posters are needed to ensure that every classroom in your department has those posters up and has them visible. Okay, and as I say, we'll take next steps from there.
I think it's very important that we just have, as I say, 15 minutes just to look at the school improvement plan and what our journey is for next year. Peter spoke about leadership and ambition this morning, and when I planned this, I was trying to think of my metaphor. Normally I have maps and compasses and mountains and things, but hopefully we will get a smooth ride this year. It'll be a bit of a roller coaster, I'm sure. But a little bird told me that Fraser spent 8 days climbing his own personal mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro. A huge achievement, so congratulations to him. And I couldn't hear the conversation properly because I'm not meant to earwig, but I believe that Ronnie and Lee did something quite spectacular, but they'll have to tell you at lunch because I don't know what it was, but it involves Snowdon and other bits and bobs and stuff. So, Three Peaks, there you go. So there we are. Great metaphors for this next year. Now, there's no getting away from it that what we do is highly complex, but when all the parts work together and something really special happens, and the self-evaluation and the standards and qualities report that you helped me write, that Peter submitted at the beginning of the summer, is testament to that. So where are we at and where are we going to this year? Well, I sent you out a briefing report, and that is the go-to document this year. It's been very well received by you, so thank you. That was part of the consultation process. I will send out these 4 or 5 core documents that I'd like you to have at your fingertips for the rest of this year again this afternoon with the links. But I genuinely hope that because there's just one place that you go to, you will find them really useful tools and not just things that we put aside and forget until in 10 months' time I have to do the reports again with Lauren. Now, because of your commitment to our approach, Anya and I were able to submit school improvement plans for both schools and our standards and qualities reports. They're very, very robust working documents. They've been very well received, and these are the links to them. And as Peter said, 2 years ago, when I was giving this talk, I highlighted that these were the key issues. And then last year, you'll notice that not much changed. But this year, we need to start moving on and looking at our aspirations and our high expectations. And when creating the school improvement plan, we've had to consider a number of core principles. And you'll notice that these can be seen as a thread right the way through all the work that we've generated in planning for this year. And one of the core things that I had to evidence with your support was the level of consultation. And in terms of consultation, I feel it was very robust. And there is a raft of evidence of all that we did. We have to abide by the NIF priorities, and you'll notice that they have changed slightly, particularly the focus on rights and needs. And you'll see that later on when we talk about health and well-being, that this is going to be a refocus. The other reason that I've created the one-stop shop resource is that if we happen to have a visit, we need to be prepared. We have been visited a lot. I think Peter said at the last count it was 9 times, either online or in person, over the last 2 or 3 years, but that's testament to your work. But if we are visited, we must be able to communicate about all we do and with evidence of impact. And I'm hoping that these few resources that we're sharing are all that you need. And as I say, I'll email these to you. We've successfully adopted the approach for the last 4 years now, of doing a few things but doing them really well, and I think the evidence that I've been able to collate from everyone gives us very, very robust proof of how well we do. So this year we've honed it down a little more, and there are 3 priorities instead of the 4 because we condensed the last 2. And Laura and I have had conversations, and we'll obviously carry on with that, in terms of the impact and the planning that we need to do in terms of CLPL, because CLPL must be informed by the 2 questions that I've outlined on the screen there. For those that want to see the impact of all the CLPL that you were involved with last year, I've collated the report of the consultation that I've done, and the bottom link on that slide will take you straight there. What's actually means for us is spelt out very clearly here. And you can see that perhaps this is one slide that you would like to save, because that is in sort of parent speak or pupil speak, the real core of what we're about this year. Equality and inclusion is going to be a major focus, and we've already talked about relationships as of this morning. And the next two slides are just for your reference. This is what myself and Guidance started off last year. It probably wasn't as explicit as this in terms of mental health and well-being, but the diagram I've actually written out, so it's a very clear reference. It just emphasises the approach that we use, and again, for me, it's another lovely checklist to ensure that we're doing and aspiring to the very best for our kids. In terms of links to help support you with a lot of the work, again, I've given you these links here, and you will see that there is going to be a lot of work this year on equality, anti-discrimination. There's a couple of our colleagues who are working very hard with us, Cara and I can't remember who else. Yes, that's right. Who are leading us on our LGBT plus charter, and they have already initiated some CLPL for us, and we'll let you know about all of that in due course. This is the slide of the front page of the relationships resource that I generated for you, the one-stop document there. So it just gives you a quick insight into the things that you can refer to. And as I say, there are quite a lot of posters that I've embedded into it that I think people will find incredibly helpful. There's a whole raft of CLPL that will have a focus on this, and certainly I personally have used some of the walkthrough stuff, and I know that other colleagues have found it very useful, so just be aware that we might be using some of that. In terms of learning, teaching and assessment, we're going to continue the work from last year, but I took advice from yourselves once I put it out there, and there is a wealth of support for the addition of a focus on questioning. And Lauren and I were reminding each other last week of how critical it is that well-planned collaborative CLPL can have on a school like ours. And this will be at the forefront of our minds in our planning. Now, as I say, originally, when I planned this, I had half an hour. So some of these slides I'm just going to skip through. Not that they're not of value, but it's things that you can revisit. But just to remind you that a lot of the work that we do is embedded in the Great Teaching Toolkit. We use a lot of the Impact Wales resources, which are very, very good indeed. And the next 6 slides, which I'm not going to talk about, are just a new set of resources that I've discovered. But you'll notice that the last 2 slides, these are just sort of one-page summaries of fantastic pedagogy, are featuring feedback and questioning. And as I say, for me, I know that people like to personalise a lot of the stuff that I produce, which I'm very, very pleased to see you do. But at least it means that you're not searching for things, and if I see the things that are useful and you can use them. But I just really love these sort of one-page summaries that can really get the conversations going and be as aids and checklists. I won't worry ourselves with too much about how teachers learn and our approach to CLPL, because that's been well rehearsed. But we will be much more mindful about embedding the coaching approach. We had a good stab of it last year. The restrictions that we had to work under didn't always lend itself to this. But there is no doubting now, there's a raft of evidence that the coaching approach is incredibly helpful. So we had a big focus on feedback last year, and from the report that I was able to write about CLPL and the impact that it had on you and our pupils, it's proved to be very, very successful. But like many things, it takes several years to embed, so we will be continuing the focus on that. However, we do need to think about the next steps. And the next steps are going to be a focus on feedback in terms of reporting, including parents and so on and so forth, and also feedback amongst ourselves when we start to visit each other's classes, in our collaborative coaching and so on and so forth. And I would like to see at the end of the year that we have a really robust policy as well that we can share with the community. So I did, these are 2 slides from last year, and I want to emphasise that because I took them from last year, that doesn't mean that they should have been done. When I spoke last year, it was actually saying that these 2 slides will be relevant this year, and we'll be reporting back on them at the end of this session. Kirstine has led a huge amount of work on half of the staff, looking at breaking down the barriers to learning, or as other people call it, differentiation. Our next steps have really been reinforced by Peter, and I won't embarrass them, but I read something from one colleague which I paraphrased, and it just encapsulated our whole approach to breaking down the barriers to learning for individual children in that first quote, which I noticed the other day. It just came at the right time when I was designing the slides. There's also going to be a focus on questioning this year. Again, I'll not dwell on it. It's really there for reference and to start the conversation when you have time to look at this set of slides in your own time. But the thing I wanted to emphasise today is that there is such a clear link with a lot of the work that you did with feedback last year. And these 2 slides just emphasise how interrelated high quality feedback and high quality diverse questioning is. And I am in no doubt that the huge amount of work that you and the pupils have done to get such good results this year is partly due to the work that we've done through CLPL. And we're very good now identifying, there's a whole raft, I could put a million things into the school improvement plan, but the trick is to work out what are the core things that are going to make the biggest difference. And I think we're really quite good at that. All of this, as I say, will be underpinned by a vast array of resources that we can cherry pick. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, and it's related to Peter's wee message about leadership, is I'm looking for an ambassador or ambassadors, I couldn't think of an appropriate phrase, who would like to work with Lauren and I, and rather like Fiona and Kirstine, who have taken on the leadership of their aspects of pedagogy, I'm looking for somebody who'd like to work with us, and I really mean that, work with us. So if it's a young colleague who's just starting out and would like a bit of a challenge, we would stand by them. Or if it's somebody that perhaps thinks that they would like an opportunity but perhaps don't have as much confidence to sort of take it up on their own, then please come and see us. We'd welcome you with open arms, and we'll give you a tremendous amount of support. Again, it was just to emphasise that I'm gathering resources. I've already started to collate a folder to put all of this in. In terms of DYW and digital literacy, again, they work quite well together. I think the big things this year are to have a very clear record of the digital literacy that children are attaining. I know that Damien and his team have already started this, but I would like us to see a more universal approach so that we do have a more robust, coherent record of how all the youngsters are doing. But the other huge job, which Aisling will be leading alongside Robert, is to really implement and embed our skills framework. That has to be a very big priority, and that's why tomorrow you've got quite a significant input to start the ball rolling on that. As I mentioned, in terms of digital literacy, it's about assessing and recording it and looking at all the other opportunities. But of course, although I said there's only 3 priorities, there are so many other bits and bobs that are thrown at us. These were just off the cuff list. And I need to let you know that tomorrow I'm enrolling 6 more Ukrainian pupils. We already have 3, and I do think we need to think quite carefully now about a strategic approach as to how to help these youngsters along. I was in the Corran Halls yesterday meeting all those families. There is a tremendous amount of support out there. One approach I'm thinking, and I'm sorry to throw this out without speaking to them, but I want to speak to them this afternoon. One approach I'm thinking of taking is maybe having a clan that is dedicated to the Ukrainians. So rather like Alex leads the hostel pupils, I think when I think about it deeply enough, there's a lot to be said for having a clan that might sort of be the go-to clan for Ukrainians. So we'll have a discussion about that this afternoon. So as I say, I'm really sorry that it was such a whistle-stop tour, but if you don't remember anything that I've said today, this is the slide to go to. So I haven't shown this to Peter yet, but this is the slide that I think is going to help us get our message out to the community. I've managed to get everything on the one slide so we can make posters of it. As I say, this presentation you've all got access to. I'll make sure that I give it out again this afternoon. But I just wanted to thank you, and if I had my 8 minutes, I was going to ask you to listen to this 8-minute clip, and I would urge you, I really genuinely would urge you to listen to this young lady for 8 minutes. It encapsulates down to the last word everything that you do for our kids and our families day in, day out. It really does. And I think there's some very powerful messages. So if you happen to have 8 minutes, click on this link. It's a really, really good listen to, and I think it will set you up in a very positive way for this year. So thanks for your patience, and speak to you later. Thanks.
I'm a bit shorter. Right, okay, so I'm going to talk to you a wee bit about exam results. As you've heard from Kevin, you've heard from Peter, this is a very positive story, which is great, given the challenges that we've had over the last 3 years and the challenges that Peter spoke about this morning. I'm focusing on the OHS results here. The reason for that is the Tyree results are not statistically significant. The Tyree staff also contribute to the Open results as well. With the Tyree results as well, you're looking at presentations of 1 or 2, which means it's easy to identify from the stats we were talking about, and all of these kind of things which we don't do. So the key thing that I've noted in my presentation to say is that, yeah, the last 3 years have been extremely challenging. Okay, we haven't had exams since 2019, and the last year was particularly challenging as well, with the lack of knowing what was going to happen, knowing quite late on that exams would go ahead, and really the hard work and the dedication that the staff have shown over the last 3 years has been remarkable, but particularly over the last year when it was so challenging to prepare and present these young people for exams. So it's really commendable how hard you've worked, and it's a story that is shown in the results. Right, okay, so the key thing to say is we are working with an incomplete set of data at the moment. The statistics that we get in August for the school are not the complete package. The 2017, 2018, 2019 results or figures I'm showing you here because they are the years with external exams. Okay, even actually when we look at the last 2 years and we look at the alternative certification model, the figures look good, even against a different model. But as I say, because it's external exams, we'll just look at the figures for external exams. As I say, the 2022 data is incomplete. We're still waiting on including college courses in that figure. We've still got MPAs to include in that figure. We've still got appeals to consider as well. We've got foundation apprenticeships to include. We've got Scottish Studies to include. And when we look at Level 5, we're potentially looking at 65 Level 5 Scottish Studies awards to go into the Level 5 data as well. So it does make a huge difference to the final figure. At the moment, the incomplete data, the 5+ Level 5 figures are 42%. We usually expect about a 10% increase or uplift in that when the February Insight data comes out. So really we're potentially looking at 52% as our 5+ Level 5 figure, which when you consider for the alternative certification model, which takes out the stress of exams and all of that pressure and underperformance that comes out of having that model of assessment, the alternative certification model figure for 5+ Level 5 is 56%. So as I say, when you consider the uplift or the increase that's going to come onto that 42% figure, that is a very, very healthy figure, which reflects the hard work that's going in. In terms of the 5+ level 6 figures, same, we don't see as much of an uplift because a lot of the widened achievement is at level 5, which impacts the level 5 results. But we would expect about a 5% uplift as a conservative estimate with the 5+ level 6 figures. So at the moment it's sitting at 14% based on August certification alone. Potentially that could go up to 19%. Again, that's in line with what we've produced on average in exam years. Essentially, though, the final figure for the alternative certification model, in 2021 was 23%. So again, we're not too far off this. And when you consider all the challenges, everything that we faced last year in trying to get these young people through exams, it's very, very good. There's lots of data that I could share with you. There's lots of things I could tell you about national pass rates, departmental pass rates, all of these kind of things. But as a school, me standing up here, sharing that with you, it doesn't make a difference at this level. It makes a difference at departmental levels when you start breaking things down and having a look and analysing your own results. But the key thing that I will highlight is the estimates versus attainment in terms of the figures of people outperforming estimates, and we do have young people who outperformed estimates by several bands, 5 or 6 bands in some cases. 394 presentations outperformed the estimated grade. We had 408 that achieved the estimated grade that was submitted, and the figure on the board is, we had 665 that were below the estimate. Of that, 419 are eligible for appeal. Okay. In terms of the grades, the reason I've included this and had to think about it, and again, I'm sure people can criticise my use of statistics, but again, you can use the statistics and manipulate it any way you want. But essentially, when I looked at the 29 presentation, it was really interesting to note that the feedback to staff was that we're not getting enough A's and B's. And again, when we looked and we went through and we analysed the figures and we put filters on the spreadsheet and all the rest of it, we thought actually the number of A's and B's looks very healthy, and that's definitely moving in the right direction. So that's another real positive to take away. In the past, we've struggled with A's and B's, but actually we're getting there, if not there, and we need to keep building on that. So that's just a really short overview of what the numbers look like at the moment, and as I say, it does show a healthy picture for the school. It shows a good set of results produced in very challenging circumstances, which is really commendable for everybody. But there's a few things to work on. This is just one part of the picture. Insight information comes out in September. That's when we get virtual comparators and we're able to look at actually how well are we performing against our virtual comparator. That's really our best indication because it's taken pupils with a similar profile to the pupils that we're presenting and giving us much more information about how well we're actually performing and how well we're doing for the young people. The local authority get themselves involved and give us lots of data as well. We've got class analysis to do, individual teachers looking at their own classes, PTs looking at departments. The data is a huge puzzle, and there's lots of ways that we can look at it and so on. Basically, one of the things that I'm asking for you to do in departments is really to have a look at your own data, and there is a form for teachers to look at their own class data. That is in the STAR folder in SQ8 and then results 2022. And I would ask that in departments you spend time looking at your results and basically giving us the story of your class and the performance. I've put in that folder the component marks, for example. So the 2022 folder has the component marks, so you'll be able to break down by paper where you've got more than one paper and look for areas that are performing strongly, areas that need improved, which can help set improvement points for courses and so on, as well as the grade boundaries, so you can get an idea of when you've got people's component marks or you've got their mark, you know how close they were to a slightly better result and so on. The key thing though is, as I say, it is incomplete data at the moment. You will have pupils that you really put in and you really, really hoped that they would pull it out the bag and they would get over the line, and they didn't. And it's really important for those pupils that didn't achieve a National 5, didn't achieve the higher, that there is some form of positive achievement. This is something we've got a lot better at, so I know a lot of departments have really focused on getting candidates through an MPA as well, or getting candidates through the National 4. We had a lot of dual presentations, I got an email from SQA about that. And it's just making sure that we have those young people have something to show for the work that they've put in. Fingers crossed they put in the work. The key thing that I will say to you as well is we have noticed, I noticed this when I came in to look at results, and I could see that there was some information missing, and had a look in CMIS, and I started checking kids' individual profiles because of the fact that I could see that things that should be there weren't there, and there were units that hadn't come through on CMIS. So we've actually managed to check a couple of certificates, and we can see that actually kids have been certificated for things on paper that is not in our system on CMIS for some reason. So CMIS and the SQA seem to have, so sure this will surprise many of you, seem to have had a breakdown in communication at some point. So I would ask that if you are looking and you're noticing that there's something that's not been awarded that should have been awarded, particularly PTs, because you'll know where we went through the open entries and we put people in for things or we passed people. If you spot that things are missing, can you let me know, because it will help me chase up with the authority, chase up the CMIS why things are missing when I know that they've been certificated potentially. So if you notice a missing award, can you pass that information on to your PT, please, and PTs could you gather information that you can and get that back to me. Right, appeals. 419 eligible appeals. As an SQA coordinator, that fills me with joy. So I have, potentially, because we have 419 appeals, these are all candidates that you estimated and you said you had evidence for that candidate at that grade. So if you have evidence, which you should, because you told me you did, then we are going to appeal these, okay? We worked out that as an individual teacher that is manageable for you. It's probably going to kill me, but we do need to basically use the right to appeal and do it, so we're going to. If there are candidates with priority appeals, those that missed out on an offer from university, missed out on a place at university because they didn't didn't meet the conditional offer, then the deadline for that is next Friday. So I really need the evidence for these candidates. And as I say, I will put out a reminder to PTs with what I need from you, a checklist of what needs to be included, and we will get that sent away. For all other appeals, it's Friday the 2nd of September. Now, that's the deadline to the SQA. I need it a wee bit earlier because myself and lots of admin support will be able to scan and upload these to the SQA website. We'll probably crash it at some point, no doubt, but we will be uploading those and putting those through. So I will put like deadlines ahead of that for PTs because, as I say, I will need it to be submitted to the SQA by that date for it to be eligible. So the appeals data is also in the 2022 folder. I did put a filter on it, hopefully that's saved. And you can just filter that by subject and level and you'll be able to see who is eligible for appeal by subject and level. So can PTs, can you make sure that your staff are aware of who in their class is eligible for appeal and start the process of that member of staff putting together their evidence pack so that we can get that sent away. Okay, but as I say, the key message from me is a really, really good set of results under very challenging circumstances, and the picture can only get healthier and it can only get better. So well done, everybody.
My turn next. Hello, everyone. It's absolutely fab to be back. Lovely to see you. I can't wait to catch up on some of your adventures over the summer, especially going up Three Peaks and Kilimanjaro. I want to hear stories of those adventures. Everybody's kind of getting to that lunchtime fuzz, so I'm not going to give this the detail that it deserves, but I'm going to start the conversation off with you to plant a seed. We need to kind of talk about target setting. Now, there's a big journey to go with this. We still need to work with parents, we still need to work with pupils, and we need to start working with you guys. Peter spoke this morning about some kind of working groups, and we most definitely need a raising attainment working group where we can start talking in more detail about some of these things, start talking about reports, start talking about mentoring, and so on. But one of the gaps, one of the things that's letting us down a little bit is that we're not working collectively with some of the data. Okay, and some of that data stems from the pupil target. We're going to change that. So this is new. And we'll go into it in more detail in the coming weeks. But it won't be a pupil target, it will be a teacher target. Because we're chasing down things that aren't possible. You're not going to get an A, wee man. That isn't your target. You've got that in your head, right? That's not going to be your target. There will still need to be a discussion, like all the feedback work that we've done. You need to sit with young people and say, look, you got a C last year. People with a C, only 12% of those pass at the next level. This is what your journey is. Or remember the bit that you really struggled with last year, and I know you got an A in Nat 5, but the little bit that you really struggled with is magnified in the higher. So that's why your target's only going to be a B this year. So this is going to be a teacher target. And then, when we know that those targets are both challenging and realistic, it needs to be something that they're possible. It can't be, what do you want, wee man? Oh, I want an A, right? That's not happening. It can't be that conversation. It's got to be back to the evidence, the CAT scores, the previous results, their NIF levels, their expert levels, all that data. I spoke to last year's teacher. They said that you're probably going to get this, or perhaps you were the last year teacher. So much more evidence-based, and collectively across the school, hundreds of years of experience of presenting young people for National 5s and higher, right? So we are actually really good at this. But if we get that target more achievable and more appropriate, when we start looking at the working grade, which is like getting on a bus, that bus that you're getting on, that's your working grade. It's not your finished grade. I don't have evidence for that. It's October, it's November, but that's the bus that you're on, and it looks like that's going to go and arrive on time at your target grade. It might go off course, it might break down, it might get a flat tire. We might need to look at that again. But at the moment, you're on track for that. But that only works if the target is right. If the target's wrong, because I come and have conversations and you say, there's no way he's going to get an A. All right, so why am I chasing that? I need to chase what's possible to achieve. And if we can work collectively on that, it means then we can start getting target groups together of kids that are underperforming, not reaching their potential. It means we can put mentors in place. It means we can put peer mentors in place. It means we can do more targeted supports, which will help everyone. But I think the secret is it's a teacher target. But that is a longer conversation. Hopefully some people will come forward and help me shape that. I started yesterday on looking at some graphics and infographics and stuff, trying to explain that. I thought, whoa, stop, I need to stop. I need to get people to help me to do that, because you guys are in front of young people much more often than I am. But I wanted to plant the seed today that we won't be doing pupil targets, we will do teacher targets. They will be discussed and explained. Yes, they will be allowed to change. You can change a teacher target up as the evidence evolves. That doesn't mean I want everybody to start as a 6 and work their way up. That doesn't work. And equally, we will have a point in the year where, under drastic circumstances, where you can move the target down. Because if you've got to February and you're still only getting 12% in assessments, in the time remaining, it is impossible to get you your A. So yes, of course, we will relook at your target at that point. So targets will be allowed to move up the way once the evidence starts to show that, and in drastic circumstances will be able to move down, but not moving down just because Billy can't be bothered. Like, you can't have an A and then them not work very hard and we'll move it to a B, and then them not work very hard and then we'll move it down to a C. That's not what we're doing. If they're capable of an A, which is what your target's going to be, what they're capable of, then we should chase, support, help, get parents involved, and so on. So I just wanted to plant that seed, teacher targets, not pupil targets. But we'll share more information with everyone over the next few weeks, and we'll probably, I can't remember from the calendar when we do that, but certainly before October, all those discussions and targets will be in place. But more details to follow. Thanks very much.
Right, folks, so that brings us quite remarkably to exactly on time. Can I just send out a very clear message on behalf of Peter? Thank you so much for your input already. Already I can feel there's a very positive atmosphere about today. Last year was hard. Certainly I think it was harder than the previous 2 years. But the one thing that got us through so successfully was the fact that we could have such open and honest conversations with each other. And we were so supportive of each other. And for me, that is probably the most powerful thing that gets me into school every day. I can genuinely say that I come into school every single day looking forward to my work. I'm very lucky to have my 3 colleagues here. You know we're a very tight team. This year we're going to be sharing even more and doing even more dual work, which we hope will benefit the school. But to each and every one of you, I put my hand on my heart, our doors are open, and I don't care how difficult that conversation is, please come and talk to us, and we'll have another successful year. So I hope you have a nice lunch, and thanks for all you've done so far.